that mean it's recording? I assume so. I guess it just starts with that. Okay.
It whispered in my ear. It said, Recording is in progress."
Yeah. Thank you so much, Zoom ID. Okay. This is Rule of Six, the podcast for Keyforge players that want to do as much as they can with Keyforge. I'm joined this week by some know as Captain Crispy, some know as Logan, some know as a member of the Ancient Bears. What's up? How are you doing, Logan?
Hey, how you doing, June? Pretty good. Excited to talk today. Don't really have anything going on in my personal life, but
Which is
good
great
to
for when
hear.
for when we have those lulls. We've got Keyforge.
Right, exactly. That's
Yeah.
our that's what
Uh,
we always turn to.
and then sometimes Keyforge becomes your social life,
Right.
as we found. Well, especially talking about this week, we've got Aember Skies. Just has reached Kickstarter backers within the last 2 weeks, depending on where you live and how lucky you got in the GG lottery, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
have you gotten your decks? Did you
oh,
order any decks?
yeah, I did. Funny thing about that, I ordered two displays, one of each set, tokens of change and Aember Skies.
Sure.
I just moved, as listeners from last week will know, and the mail just got here like a week after I moved, and it went to my old place, and for some reason it was marked as vacant, so it
Oh.
was returned to sender, and I was like,
Oh no.
okay. The post office has like a intercept thing where you can like intercept a return to sender package, and then they said it was not eligible. And I looked at the list of eligibility requirements, and I didn't see something that didn't work, but I'll just wait for Josh. Josh and I will have a little chat.
Oh no. So you haven't got a chance to even open anything yet.
No. Well, I do.
Oh.
So I live
Oh,
with meetups now, and he's got like six total boxes, four Amber Skies, two tokens of change,
very
and
cool, very cool.
we've opened like about two boxes of Amber Skies, three Amber boxes of Amber Skies, and I've also been I broke the seal on the side of the tokens of change box, and I've been sneaking decks from the side of it, so it still looks sealed. I think I've opened five of those now. So that's been
Oh,
fun.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'm up to, according to Decks of Keyforge, 94 Amber Skies decks.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
So yeah, I went crazy and opened a bunch.
Wait, so
But
did you get a
yeah,
super key?
I did. It is actually still in the box. I haven't used it.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy with I use for my first event I went to, I got the metal keys there. There's
Hmm.
like 2019 Vegas. So I've
Hmm.
been using 2019 Vegas keys for my Keyforge career.
That rules. Yeah. It's we get stuff all the time, and then sometimes we're just attached to the old stuff. So it's like, what do we do with it? Like playmats for
Yeah.
one. Um,
Oh my God. I have this, I don't know, I don't want to pull it out, but like a giant IKEA has these, oh look, you can see them.
like the totes.
Uh Box up there. It's like a
Oh,
white little box, and that's all playmats. And I
oh
just shove them all
no.
away. So I don't have
It's
to
like
look
the
at them.
size of a medium dog.
Yeah, the with the most recent game found, you could get custom playmats. So
Right.
custom you could choose what deck is on the playmat, but they're extra long. So they
Yeah.
don't fit in that anymore.
Oh
So
no.
now I had to roll those up. But all the other ones are nice and laying flat, and whenever I want to look at them, I can pull them out and look at them. But what else do you do with playmats?
Yeah. Well, I still want to do there's a famous Netrunner story of a player who showed up with like 30 or 40 playmats and just played like with the high ground
Hmm.
above everyone else. Um,
That's too much carrying stuff around for me. That's for sure.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. But yeah, I don't know what I'll do with all of them. We can just get more. But the super key, Brendan doesn't really like because like you have to pick it up to
Yeah.
flip the keys, and then the other keys are like in the air and they're kind of wobble.
Yeah,
And
the
like,
design decision is kind of strange, but I mean, I think the idea is just to have one portable thing that you can bring with you, right?
yeah,
Talking about key colors,
talking about key colors.
how do you like the new house? How's Skyborn treating you?
Oh, Skyborn, huh? We're to start there.
Yeah.
Um, Listen, we gotta start somewhere, right? You know, it's like we can't start good at the top of Skyborn, you know? Um, yeah, this is we've got a lot of creatures, right? That I don't know if any of them have play effects. And even the ones that don't, say like Shay Cloud Kicker is a 2 power uncommon creature that has play reap. You can move it in your battle line, and that's it. So it's basically just a blank 2 power creature to me. We've got like the pirate champion who's like a 6 power taunt. It just feels like in this age of Keyforge where we're at, it doesn't it feels like opening Skyborn results in just like too slow of a deck, right? Like the rest of your deck can be gas, and then like you're just stuck with a Skyborn turn where like I'm gonna take a total pause on the game, it feels like.
Yeah, the one Skyborn pod I've opened that has something playable is the Treasure Island package. So it comes with
Like,
Flint's Legend, Flint's Map, Flint's Stash, and Treasure Island. And then double red line rotation, which I think is the premier new Skyborn card. So it's play if your opponent has 7 amber or more, steal half of their amber rounding down. And it has an amber pit.
it has an Aember Pip. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's
until your opponent
very
has like
oppressive.
10 Amber, right? No, until they have like
They would need
11
12.
Amber.
Or yeah,
Well,
sorry,
yeah,
11. Yeah.
they need a lot of Amber before it becomes worse than too much to protect. Um,
Right. And but to your point, none of those are creatures, right?
yeah.
The best part of the Skyborn house kind of has been their actions and their artifacts. Do we have a name for the cards which give 2 house enhancements? I know the single house enhancements are called recruiters, but I don't think we have like a
Oh,
name for the 2 house
are
recruiter
they called
guys.
recruiters? Who called them
Yeah, they
recruiters?
actually no their trait is recruiter.
Really?
Yes, but it's a nice way to differentiate them from everyone else.
But those are all creatures, and
Those are all creatures, so it makes sense that they're recruiters. But I was gonna say the Skyborn one is an artifact,
yeah.
which lets you ready and fight again if your blue key is forged. And I think it's one of the better 2 house enhancement cards out there.
Isn't it like straight
Logos, but
worse than what is it called? Red Skies?
it is. But I mean, it's an artifact that sticks around, right?
Oh, it's an artifact.
Right.
Yes, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
very good. Also, it has 2 enhancement pips, which
Right. That's what I was. Yeah.
I
If you want enhancement pips, that's your go-to.
yeah. I feel like the recruiters are very strong, right? Like simply the act of like giving an enhancement, a house enhancement, and usually decent scrap. I mean, there's a couple that aren't
Yeah.
too enticing.
Have you read the Broadmoor one?
Well, isn't it if you can like ready and fight with the least powerful creature or something?
Ready and fight with a non-Brobnar creature.
Oh,
So if you had a bunch
oh
of, say,
yeah.
house enhancements that turned all your
Yeah.
creatures Brobnar, it makes it worse.
It's still pretty, it's honestly
Yeah,
like better than like the
it's
Dis
not
one,
horrible.
which deals 2 to one of your creatures, or the Skyborn one, which just rearranges a creature.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, but like the Equidon one's like kind of insane. It's archive
Ecodon's really
it
nice.
each creature on each side becomes archived by its owner, which is like we've got Sandworm, y'all. It's there's Time Traveler, we've got discard pips, so we can kind of just do this whenever. Some of them feel like honestly, even the worst of them feel like quite strong. So these rares that have 2 enhancement pips already feel like above rate before we get to their effects. And then like, the Skyborn one has an action that is kind of worth like almost 2 cards, right?
All
So
right.
uh
Well, and then the Logos one is the most bonkers one.
yeah, each
Um,
time your opponent plays a card, they
they lose an amber.
Oh, is that what it does?
Yeah, it's crazy effect, but there was a misprinting, so you will have to pull it up on the app or look it up online. But it is action whenever your opponent plays and let me read it. Action during your opponent's next turn. Each time they play a card, they lose one amber, which is pretty crazy for
It's
a
really good.
double enhanced card, right?
Yeah, and in a set that throws around enhancements too, like
Mm,
I mean, I've got one that is in this as well. So
right.
basically, most of the game, once it gets set up, your opponent cannot uh, is 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 having a
Punished
real
for
hard
playing
time.
cards.
Yeah, just gaining amber is tough, right? Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna play creatures and reap with them? Like, then a board wipe is, yeah. The
Yeah,
house
the
enhancements
oh, go ahead.
feel like the strongest ones. Like, they're my favorite.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Playing this set, um, I should mention I've only played this set once in person and last night, but playing this set feels a lot how Mass Mutation kind of did. Way back in the day, it was the idea where, oh, it was exciting opening up enhancements. Mass Mutation was the first set that had enhancements. And it was like dream that if the enhancements fall on the right magical card, like you could have a really busted card, right? And I kind of feel that way playing this set, but for house enhancements this time, it's kind of how well did your house enhancements land? And that's kind of the chase cards, I would say.
Yeah.
Even more so than the Sky Beasts. We haven't even talked about the Sky Beasts, but I feel like you want as many house enhancements as you can, and you have to hope that they land on something cool,
Well,
something
ideally, just like creatures and artifacts mostly,
right.
right? Because they just
Yeah,
get so much more value.
even actions, right? If you think
Hmm.
about it, normally chaining yourself with an action that you might want to play later would be bad because one third of the time, or you can only play it one third of the time. But because, say, you had a house enhancement land on like effervescent principle or something, you don't have to wait to be in a logo's turn to actually use effervescent principle. You could wait for the other house that it's also in. So it's like there's nothing really bad per se. I mean, there's a few things bad, but that a house enhancement can actually land on. And I think it's kind of a testament to the set that it feels exciting to open again,
Yeah.
where enhancements always kind of did that, but I think this takes it to another level.
Yeah. And it can sometimes feel disappointing to like see him show
Yeah.
up in the wrong place, but like really it's
Or
like pretty
not
much
get any
never,
at all.
yeah, that's probably worse. Um, for the most part, like is never worse. It's almost never worse. Um,
Mhm.
so it is very exciting to open up the set. I think actually the set per on average has the most enhancements per card, right? It gives out around 8.5,
Really?
where Mass Mutations gave around like 4.8. So it's
Okay.
like by a wide margin.
Yeah,
Um,
I haven't looked into those stats, but that's kind of exciting. Kind of
yeah.
crazy, actually.
Honestly, in most decks, it feels like half the cards have pips. I could probably just
Right.
look at a list and tell, but it feels like there's pips on everything.
It does present a kind of a problem where I can no longer just ask a person across the table what pips they have. We're kind of gonna have to be like, oh, just hand me your deck. Let me look. Let me just look through everything. Let me see where the house enhancements landed. Let me see. I guess we could pull up the app, but people
Yeah.
don't really do that in face-to-face play.
I've started to tend to. Um, I don't know. But I mean, like now with like foreign languages and everything,
Yeah,
and
sure,
it
sure.
just kind of it started to I've started to see it more common. Maybe that's just because I play a lot of Alliance now.
Mhm.
Um, but it also just helps like it's just like in a new set to like understand what these cards even look like, right? They're in the part of a set's life cycle where reading the Archon card is like, oops.
Doesn't explain the Archon card.
It doesn't explain the Archon card.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like if you can gain any information, like having the ability to like reference the cards in like a house without having like look at half the cards in their discard pile, right? To just
Right.
get to visualize like what does a house in Skyborn look like now? What does Equidon look like now? Or Dis, who's been out of the game for how long? Since Mass Mutations, right? Except
Hmm.
Vault Masters, but I don't
Sure,
count
sure.
that. So like seeing what the house looks like is very helpful through the Master Vault. But yeah, there's like learning what your opponent's cards specifically look like is like it's too much to memorize right now.
Right. Yeah, I feel that. I definitely feel that. What are you talked a little bit about this. How do you think they are compared to the other houses? What are your overall like house rankings if you
Yeah.
had to go down the line?
Yeah, let's do that. I do want to return to Skyborn because I think
Yeah.
I
We'll
do
get
points
there.
where action's good, creature's bad. Um, so I would say top of my list is actually this one moved up in my eyes is Equidon.
Okay.
Equidon, I find, is the best at closing games right now. And maybe that's just because I'm playing Sealed Amber Skies, but they present like a wild amount of amber every turn and even have like a bit more disruption than they used to. They don't have like
Yeah,
corner of the
they feel like a mini unfathomable almost.
yeah. Oh wait, they do have corner of the market.
Right. Yes, they got corner of the market.
Talent Scout, they've got so the new cards are three sheets to the wind,
Yep.
which is that the enhancer too, right? It gives two house enhancements.
No.
No, something else.
Three sheets to the wind is your opponent draws three, discards a random, puts a random card on top of their deck, and purges a random card.
Yeah. So
So
it's like a recklessness kind of, but it's a little bit more disruptive in the way it does it. Um, and
yeah, I
then
would
there's
say, oh, I guess it doesn't have an amber pit. I would say I'd prefer three sheets to the wind pretty much all the time, but nah, the
yeah.
amber pit, yeah.
High Street Churn, which
Hmm.
you play High Street Churn and you choose a house on your opponent's Archon card, and they discard cards from their hand until they discard that house. But then they refill their hand, right? Um, so it kind of can mess around with some handcrafting. I've used it to discard a full hand, right? Which is where it comes into like the punctuated equilibrium level of disruption. But you can also use it coming off of a library access turn, right? So someone uh, plays library access, they do a full combo, they end their turn with 7 cards in hand, or like maybe even 10. Um, and you high street turn and say logos, they're going to discard until they discard logos, which means all 10 are discarded. And they draw up to a 6 card hand, right? So
Hmm.
it, I feel like it kind of counters some high efficiency cards, even like going back to like mass mutations, decks that are constantly using autoencoder to archive random cards are going to end up with like big hands, legionary trainers, Martian generosity, winds of death, all end up with like big homogeneous hands that you can reset, cause your opponent to redraw totally.
I feel like Equidon almost has the Geistoid problem that kind of Grim Reminders had. Not to the extreme that Grim Reminders was, but basically that their house does too much. So Geistoid had the whole Haunted and gaining bonuses from Haunted, and they also had like a capture kind of sub theme. So you were always kind of happy with any Geistoid pod you had in Grim Reminders, and I feel Equidon's kind of the same way. You're getting this amber generation, you're getting disruption, you're getting steel. They've got steel, you're getting capture, you're getting, efficiency, you're getting it's kind of like a one house does all kind of deal with Equidon, which is kind of wild.
Oh, so when you say a problem, you mean a problem for everyone else, not for
Yes, of course, of
Equidon.
course. Well, I'm just saying in terms of balancing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You could conceivably get an Equidon house, and it's not too hard to get an Equidon house that has pretty much all the tools you need to win a Keyforge game,
yeah.
which isn't necessarily true for the other houses.
Yeah, I think yeah, we've seen that from Geistroid. Honestly, like Star Alliance during Worlds Collide felt similar to that, where it just kind of did everything you needed to. I feel like the elephant in the room for me is the fact that this is the smallest card pool we've had, right?
Hmm.
And what that means is most of the decks I see have like at least one 3-up in commons, right? That didn't feel like the usual. And I'm seeing like 4-ofs or even 3-3-ofs, pretty common. So there's a decent chance you will be hitting the like powerful cards more often. And yeah, you'll be hitting some decks that have uh almost all the bad cards. But I think as these decks get sifted through, we're going to see some really ridiculous decks that utilize the best cards in them kind of more common. Like it'll be a lot easier to find that across your three houses, I think.
Hmm. A lot of people have been saying that that's a bad thing, right? That more duplicates leads to more homogeneous decks, and they're all going to kind of feel the same.
Yeah,
But I feel like house enhancements, bring it back to house enhancements, kind of bring that life back, right?
true.
Where um, you might have the same cards as another deck, but it's very, very unlikely that the house enhancements are going to land on the same cards, right? Or even remotely the same. And I think the house enhancements give wildly different gameplay depending on what they land on. So there's good and bad. I
Yeah,
mean, personally, as a air quotes competitive player, I'm always happy to see more duplicates, right? I want to know my deck is consistent. I want to know what I'm drawing. I want if my deck is doing a certain thing, I want it to keep doing that certain thing. So I'm always happy to see duplicates, but I understand it's not something everyone's looking forward to.
yeah. And I feel like this set introduces a lot of like bleed, right? So you've got like duplicates causing decks and like pods to kind of bleed into each other. And we've got house icon causing houses within a deck to kind of bleed together. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do find myself sometimes wondering what house someone's playing with on a turn, like what their active
Yeah.
house is. But I've always kind of felt that with Star Alliance anyway. It feels like a very different experience, I guess is what I'm trying to say, which is a good thing, or I feel it's good now. It's definitely interesting, and I definitely want to see more of, I want to experience more of this, right? Understand like what this means for like an Aember Skies meta, because I haven't really played it outside of Aember Skies sealed.
Hmm. What do you think's the next house down after Equidon?
Oh, right, the next house. I think Logos is just kind of ridiculously consistent, kind of the opposite problem where every card kind of does the same thing. Draw and archive cards.
All right.
It does have a few pieces it didn't have. It has a bit more recursion and in some common cards, and it has one of the I would say like the the like big three of the set is a linked rarity Titan something something
Titan Sentry.
Titan Sentry, which to start is a creature that says neither player can pull their archives at the start of their turn. At least for one turn, you are going to trap your opponent into keeping their archives. In addition, on play and reap, you choose a player to randomly put one of their cards into their archive. So you can use that as just efficiency for as disruption for your opponent because they won't be able to access that card for a turn. So it's basically discarding a card or putting it on top of their deck or something. So that's a good card, right? I would say that's a very good card. Just that kind of disruption, like archive hate, like you can't pull archives, is that could close a game in itself, honestly.
Yeah, and then it comes with a linked card. Talk about the linked card.
I don't know. Is that link card any good? What does that do, Logan?
It's play forge a key at +6 current cost, reduced by the total combined number of cards in both players' archives. So you can kind of see the synergy there with the Titan Sentry. And then it says discard each player's archives. So even if you're not using it to forge a key, you're still using it to clean up both you and your opponent's archives, which is kind of crazy.
Kind of crazy. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. Well, does it like purge itself?
No, that's it.
No.
That's the
Oh,
rest of the text.
so you can cheat all three of your keys like that, potentially.
Yes, and there are multiple ways in this set to recur cards. The greatest hit Geistoid in here somewhere is back. You've got a couple ways to get cards back from this card, a couple ways to even get stuff back from Purged, actually. But
Yeah. Logos
um,
has a common called Connect to Me Transfer, and it's an action card that archives each flank creature. So that's already four of the six cards you need to get
break even.
Empyrean charge to break even. Although it
Yeah.
has an amber too, so it's four of the five. So yeah, it can be real easy to get there, I think. Oh, it'll be interesting to see. Honestly, now I'm thinking about like a legacy Winds of Death, and then you play Empyrean charge.
Hmm. I actually pulled a deck with a Legacy Data Forge, so you
Oh.
could go. I guess it wouldn't really work out with Empyrean Charge in the same deck. You're just throwing your stuff away, but
Well, you could pull your archives at the start of your turn and then Data Forge with your whole hand, and then Empyrean charge with like, I don't know if your opponent
with your
has
opponent's archives,
five,
which
still
isn't impossible.
it feels pretty likely lately.
Yeah, I think the standout thing with logos, at least from what I've played, is their commons are really good. You've got a bunch of just free draw a card, essentially cards.
Classics like Daughter and Daughter's new step cousin Articulated Wren.
Yeah,
Um,
Articulated Ren is very good.
both the commons and because of the duplicates we're seeing, you could have a suite of logos that draws you to 11 cards at the end of every turn. So it's pretty good.
Right. You've got the Recruiter, which is Brillix Ponder, and it's just scrap, draw a card, one and done. Ezra Pause, it's play after reap, reveal your opponent's hand, draw a card. So it's very easy to get a Logos pod where every single one of your cards is just draw a card, which
Yeah.
is bonkers. You recording?
Yeah, we're
All
recording.
good? Very
Um,
cool.
so I feel like we're also forgetting or not mentioning the perhaps strongest logos common creature, which is,
You recording?
yeah, we're
All
recording.
good? Very
Um,
cool.
so I feel like we're also forgetting or not mentioning the perhaps strongest logos common creature, which is Skippy, who on play or reap archives the top card is, of your own, or is it a player's
It's your
deck
own, yeah.
of your own deck, which is quite strong. So there's just like such a, I don't know, like a
And
saturation.
it has a hidden second effect of being remote access as well.
Yeah. So
Use an
scrap.
opponent's oh, scrap. Use an opponent's artifact as if it were yours. If you do draw a card, so there's another draw card for you.
Yeah, it does. So the house does a lot. That said, I don't know if constantly playing logos will like win you the game, right? I feel like that's what other houses like Equidon are really good at
Right.
doing. But it's
Yeah,
a,
but you can get some pretty crazy pods here. I'll send you one. We can cut this out, but this is one of the decks in one of the pods I'm most excited about. If you take a look. Oh, we didn't even mention Time Traveler. Time Traveler's back.
Time Traveler's back.
Um, but I recently pulled a deck with Time Traveler and Ezra Pause. On top of that, we have double Connect to Me transfers. So that's draw three each time you play a Connect to Me transfer, archive them, and then draw three the next turn. It has a Code Monkey with a draw pit, so even more draw, and then archive the Time Traveler and the Ezra. And then it has Mind Over Matter. So archive them again, play them again, draw three more. And a Quantum Compass. Quantum Compass, probably one of the better cards in the set, which is just Omni archive the top card of your deck, which is also kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I feel like SAS is
But
still being implemented, so I think this deck is even stronger than it looks.
yeah, this pod I think is just not even something that's gonna be that uncommon, right? You're gonna get a lot of ways to draw. You're gonna get a lot of ways to archive. Not a lot of ways to, I guess, do anything else besides that, but you're gonna get a
Right.
lot of draw and a lot of archive.
I feel like the house is doing what it always did, but Really, really, this might be Logos' best showing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a lot more leaner, right? It's a lot more slimmed down to be more focused on just drawing and just archiving. Not necessarily a good or bad thing, but I think it is, if you go to Logos, you can pretty much guarantee that you're getting something that'll give you some efficiency, where
Yes.
in the past that wasn't necessarily true. Do you want to talk about Deanimator, one of the standout Logos cards?
I was just thinking about that as I was looking over your list, although it doesn't have it. Deanimator is a 3 power creature with elusive? Is that what it is?
Yes, 3 power elusive.
What the heck? So it's 3 power and elusive, and on play or reap gives a creature in play a mineralize counter.
Each card that has a mineralized counter on it is considered an artifact and gains action destroy this artifact. So if you have some way to remove Deanimator, everything that has a mineralized counter hops back into play as a creature.
I see. So it's like a passive effect. I see.
Right. Yeah. The original, when we got it leaked, it was permanent, um,
I see.
which I think they thought was a little too strong. So yes, now you have to keep your Deanimator alive for these things to be artifacts.
Unless you have two deanimators and you deanimator your deanimator, and then you
I
use.
mean, they could have artifact removal, but
They would
yes, you're
never.
right.
They would never do that to me.
I did, speaking about Deanimator, I did take a long, hard look at the set trying to break Deanimator. What it comes down to essentially is there aren't too many great actions on creatures. There aren't too many great passive effects on creatures. One that you may think is a combo, but is more of a non-bow, is one of the Sky Beasts. So the Sky Beast number one, his name is Akugyo. It's each amber that would be added to your opponent's pool is captured by Akugyo instead. Turns out, artifacts cannot capture amber.
Okay.
So if you deanimator it, its passive effect no longer applies. But I mean, you could always have it just sit out there, capture a lot of amber, then turn it into an artifact. And then if an artifact has a bunch of amber on it, once it's destroyed, it does not go back to your opponent. So that's a nice way to get around any of these like capture a ton cards. Drumble's in the set, so capture a million amber back with Drumble, turn it into a artifact, and then yeet it. The amber does not go back to your opponent.
Yeah.
So any strong capture effects you're looking for in a deanimator deck. There's not too many actions on creatures because you would still be able to activate actions. One interesting thing is destroyed still triggers. So we don't have a lot of artifacts with destroyed triggers, but if you have a creature with a destroyed and turn it into an artifact, now that it has a mineralized counter, you can use that destroyed ability whenever you need to, which is kind of
Hmm.
handy in some cases.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I think. Well, the thing that I first thought of was because I was looking at your logos list. Um,
Mhm.
a old Worlds Collide favorite combo was Candle Unit and Ghost Form, of course, the classic. So you can deanimate a Candle Unit, and every time your opponent reaps, you draw a card. So if you had
Yes.
that and Archon, for example, every time they play a card, they lose an amber. Every time they reap, you draw a card. It'd be pretty good. It
Throw
would
a
look good for them.
throw a daughter in there,
Throw a
just draw an
daughter.
extra card. Throw a Venomoth in there, your opponent draws one less card.
Yeah, are those really the best effects you saw? I feel like some of the Sky
Yeah.
Beasts have passive effects. That would be really
So
good.
I took a look. You can get a one-sided speed sigil, which is kind of cool with Titanerpon. The kind of disc sky beast looking guy, Screan. At the end of your turn, your opponent discards the top card of their deck. Your opponent cannot choose the house of the discarded card during their next choose a house step,
Oh, that's insane.
which is also, yeah, on an artifact, right? That's just a passive ability that you don't have to activate. That just happens.
It's a Tesmal
Um,
on a stick.
Not even on a stick. It doesn't even.
Oh, it's no longer a
It
stick
fires
anymore.
itself. Yeah.
But it's a constant
Uh,
Tesmal. That's pretty crazy.
yeah. I think we're gonna see a lot of cool deanimator shenanigans going on.
Ooh, here's a strong one. Behemoth means at the start of your turn, you give a +1 power counter to a creature.
Wow, yeah.
Every turn, that's infinite value.
I mean, I was joking before, but there's so many things that give a +1 power counter. They definitely need to come out with a set where power counters matter. You know, do crazy stuff with you get your Grove Keepers, get your Gravel Guts, get your all these cards that are seemingly useless, but gotta give them some bonus.
Gotta give him something to work with.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, here's a good one. Blue Amber Drake, or any of the Amber Drakes, still have
Hmm.
their destroyed effect to gain 4 and then forge their key at current cost. So you can kind of just save that for the right moment, right?
Yeah, caveat, it does still treat it as the house it is. That
Yeah,
was a horrible way to say it.
yeah,
But yeah, so it the mineralized counter is an action ability. So you would have to go into the house that the mineralized creature was. So it's not all powerful, but you definitely can save the Amber Drakes for a rainy day.
yeah.
Um, just to
Or,
pop it whenever you need it.
okay, how about this one? Hungry Hippogriff. All your friendly creatures
Hmm.
for perhaps the rest of the game gain destroyed. Move each amber on this creature to your pool. That's like a mega Curiosaurus.
Right.
That seems really good. You what do you mean? There's nothing that good.
I wasn't counting the Sky Beast because it's hard to kind of,
Sure.
guarantee a Sky Beast in your deck along with the animator. But yeah, there's a ton of. We will see in the upper echelon of decks a bunch of these weird deanimator combos. I saw most recently someone pulled a quad deanimator deck.
Oh,
Um, don't know how good it is. Oh, another thing to mention is you can use it as removal, right? You
right.
can mineralize one of your opponent's creatures and it's gone. And there's not much they could do about it except clear deanimator, and it's
Well, also you can use Skippy the Glorious's scrap effect to use enemy
mhm.
effects to action destroy itself.
Remote access is also in the set as well.
Oh, really?
Um,
That's hilarious.
yeah, just ways to use your opponent's artifacts. But yeah, what is your next house of choice?
My next would be Dis.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Is very strong.
This I almost for me might put it over Logos, but I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I think I want to hear more of that. Really, for me, it's just, I mean, Logos has always been best at making other houses better. It does that more than ever. Making two houses better is more impactful than having one good house for me. But that just might be the past influencing me. This set is very different, and that kind of efficiency has sort of a different place than it used to be, where that kind of efficiency used to make clunky decks place like smoother than any other deck. Have strong value in so many of our houses. It'd be hard
Well,
to.
if you squint, that's what the house enhancements do, right? So we can get these efficiency plays out of nowhere almost, just in the fact that house enhancements exist,
Or
which
I
is
could
kind of crazy.
play my efficiency cards out of house and get even more
Right.
efficiency.
Sure, sure.
I keep going. We can go all day.
I really like this. It also kind of has that same air quotes problem where it is a house that kind of do everything. Problem for your opponent, that is. Number one, first and foremost, always the best disruption house. So there's a lot of ways to make your opponent draw less or mess with your opponent, either discarding cards, drawing less. Especially this time around, it has a sub theme of wanting to destroy your own creatures, which is an interesting take on this. They've always had Dust Imp. They now have a nice common here, which is a Gift of Amber action. It has an Amber Pit. Play, destroy up to 2 creatures. For each creature destroyed this way, the creature's controller gains 1 Amber. So not only is this removal for your opponent if you have to get rid of something crazy, there are a lot of self destruction effects that are very important this set. Nefru is back. Soul Snatcher is back. So you might get a deck where you really want to destroy your own stuff, ignore your opponent's stuff completely.
That's 5 amber, right? With
Right.
Soul Snatcher and Efru, or both. That's 7, right? That's kind of wild.
And I think the standout card in this time around is actually going to be Arise. So not only can you play out your stuff, destroy it, arise it, destroy it again, you have to keep in mind Arise now has the added functionality of looking at house enhancements. So if you pick Dis, for example, you'll pick up all your Dis-enhanced creatures as well. Or if you pick another house, you'll pick up those enhanced creatures as well.
I've seen several Arises that are house enhanced, so you can use the Arise in
Right.
either house. So there's just so much flexibility with the card that the chain feels like almost too little for the card.
Yeah, same thing as always. Dis has ways to steal and capture and slow down your opponent. They've got artifact control, they've got board clear. So I think it's another one of these houses that kind of they squeezed a lot into.
Yeah, they also have
They can kind of do everything.
the creatures with the scariest fight and reap effects because they're so disruptive.
Yes.
You've got like
Yes.
your stealth mode types, you've got your control the weak types. It can be very strong if you can keep that board. Arise is something that helps with that a lot. But we're also seeing decks with a lot of this card called Clipped Wings, which is an action with an Aember Pip and either has a Inspector effect and purges a random card from your opponent's hand, which is like a Mind Bar but more disruptive. Or you can choose to shuffle your opponent's entire archives into their deck. And frequently, we've seen the best archive disruption be on rares, like Dysania or now Empyrean Charge. But getting that on a common effect that's not limited one per deck means that, like, decks are going to have access to fighting things like Winds of Death. Unfortunately, caught in the collateral damage mass mutations decks, I think you're going to have a really hard time into Aember Skies. I've heard a lot of people say that Winds of Death and Grim Reminders are really strong, but all we need is something to counter that to make it healthy. But by the same token, Grim Reminders does so many of what past sets do excellently, like mass mutations did, that countering them is also making mass mutations feel like really bad to play in my experience. I don't know how like a mass archive deck in mass mutations would survive something like Empyrean Charge or Clipped Wings, but it is extremely powerful for sure.
Yeah, the other kind of main archetype in mass mutations was like really good artifacts, and Aember Skies has you covered there too, with a ton of artifact control this time around.
I think Aember Skies generally is a set with a lot of tools. I would probably liken it to mass mutations most, except that it has an additional piece of scaling amber control in redline rotation.
Yeah, it feels like what mass mutation felt like at the time to FFG Keyforge. So like when mass mutation came out, that similar power level towards all previous sets is kind of how I feel about Aember Skies now coming out to all previous sets at this point. But yeah, have you read cards like Cauterize Vitality? Like
Oh,
there's some
yeah.
really special cards in here.
Is that a common?
It is not uncommon.
Okay. But it destroys either an artifact or a creature, which being able to destroy an artifact or creature is quite powerful. I mean, cards that destroy creatures generally have some sort of condition. I mean, we see that in Skyborn. There's crop dusting, which destroys a flank creature, right? So doing it conditionless or being able to destroy an artifact is very strong.
And this card can do both. If you do, your opponent loses amber equal to the number of bonus icons on the destroyed card. So this is probably the single best piece of not only removal, but artifact removal in the set, I would say.
Yeah, it's comparable to Reclaim by Nature, but with a negative impact on the game state rather than a positive one.
No amber pit. That's, I guess, the trade-off you have for an amazing card. But still, it's almost like Infernus levels of you want to see this in your deck, right?
Yeah, and with Aember Skies, so many more enhancements than any other set. This thing is going to have a lot of targets. Maybe you just hit in your own deck. How many cards have you seen with 2 and 3 pips? Like a ton.
And it doesn't purge them,
Yeah,
so
it
you
doesn't
can do it again.
Right. Yeah, we see that in Mass Mutations with Ritual of Tognath, which has 3 Amber pips on it. So you play that, then Infernus it, so it's like a 6 Amber swing to your opponent. And now we can just have that kind of again with the Cauterized Vitality. It's very strong, and I think this has a lot of tools for, I guess, in just as many tools for slowing down your opponent as Logos has for speeding up your own deck.
And then there's the sub theme of self destruction. There are quite a few destroyed effects in the set that are pretty much all positive. If you pull one of the Sky Beasts with a destroyed effect, such as the Amber Drakes or Volax or something like that, you really want Dis as one of your houses.
Yeah, I agree there. So I could see going either way for Dis and Logos. So you didn't even
Yeah.
correct me on Equidon. You think it's first too?
I think those three are the top three. It's kind of murky as to what's best, and your mileage may vary based on the pods you get. But just looking at the cards overall, I think you can kind of make a case for all three of them.
Sounds like you're trying to avoid making a hot take.
No. I mean,
On my
I
show,
think
come on, give me the top three. Give me an order, just on feeling.
my top three were just Dis, then Logos, then Equidon. So, I mean, kind of same deal, just mixed up a little. I think it's just because the Dis houses I pulled were consistently good, right? Where more than not, like 10 out of your 12 cards are great. And you're happy to see any of them. Because Equidon, you can kind of get some cards where you're not too happy to see, or they're niche or don't work all the time. Logos, we talked about, where you're archiving and drawing a lot, but you're kind of, that's all you're doing. You're just archiving and drawing a lot. But this, I feel like you're always happy to see the cards you have, and they always do something. And they're always, in terms of creatures, they're almost like must kill on sight, right? In a way, if you look at that as forcing your opponent to have answers for it, that's also a form of disruption, right? Where they might have to take a less optimal turn just to get rid of one of these Dis witches that are on the field that can pop off, and you could just call Dis the rest of the game.
My experience with the same token was that the Equidon pods that we were pulling generally were able to make 4 to 8 amber on an Equidon turn. That causes your opponent to have to respond with a suboptimal turn to somehow stop your key, right? Whereas Logos generally is setting you up for those big turns.
Yeah, maybe Logos is the bottom of the three.
Maybe.
Now that we've talked about it, but it hurts. It hurts. We love drawing cards here.
It's so wild because this is like one of the best Logos we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it might just be its role in like Aember Skies is not as important as it was in Worlds Collide or Mass Mutations, which I can fully believe. I can fully believe that. It may not even be the strongest in its own set, which is something to, there's something to take away from that. The fourth for me, I think past here is where a lot of this is based off of impressions, and the best of the best at some point will cause all these to be mixed up. But right now I'm feeling Geistoid at number 4. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, Geistoid, I feel like, lost a lot of tools in the transfer from Grim Reminder now to Aember Skies. We lost Boo, a lot of the easier ways to get yourself haunted, and a lot of the payoffs. We do have in here somewhere still. We do have Junk Restoration still, but in terms of overall power level, you'll definitely see less Geistoid in a top Aember Skies deck.
Yeah. Well, I think that does do something for the house in another way. Future is Past now feels like a really meaningful card to have in your deck because it flips your deck and discard. Whereas before, it kind of felt like a janky Boo, if anything. Now we don't have Boo to compare it to. Honestly, really refreshing to see it as your rare. It leans way more into the capture effects than
right. That's what I was gonna bring up.
We saw before. So it loses Demo Eldergast, which is the Amber generation you used to have. We keep Thoughtcatcher and A Strong Feeling, which both give you other ways to capitalize, right? That I think feel less janky than Demo did, because a lot of it came down to, okay, well, are we haunted at this point? Perhaps your opponent thinks they can't destroy your creatures, but you would just unhaunted yourself. It makes the game a little bit easier to understand, which has benefits, I think. Benefits and downsides, both within the ability to show understanding of the board state, but also to lightening the load in what's become an increasingly complicated game.
Yeah, I'm happy they're kind of stepping away from Haunted. You still have your Haunted abilities, and they're still good when you are haunted, but a lot of these new cards still do something when you're not haunted, you know what I mean? So it's not so much more emphasis on haunted that we lose the rest of the house.
Yeah, and we still got a lot of discard pips floating around. Seeing Geistoid up right in the middle of the pack, like to me, feels really good. I don't know if it'll stay there, but it feels good to see what felt like a entirely like broken house
Hmm.
suddenly make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that really pops out to me as broken or some sort of, crazy combo you're looking for in Geistoid.
Yeah.
Now it's just they're all kind of average cards and they all kind of exist.
Right, they exist within like a biome. What is it? They exist within an ecosystem, right?
Sure,
Where
sure.
they actually work with other cards instead of
All right.
all being bombs, you know?
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
and I think that's really good. I feel like it works as a support house. It has the most frequent access to Aember control, it feels like. There's so much capture floating around. They have a couple effects that are really splashy still, like Crepuscular Rays, which puts all Amber on a friendly creature into your pool and then destroys the creature
With an Amber Pip.
with an Amber Pip. So it's like a 6 Emperor Tyrannus from Worlds Collide without the condition of it having to be the most powerful creature, and with an Amber Pip. And then we've also got a card that I've been really liking that I wasn't expecting to, which is called Manifestations.
Hmm.
It has an Amber Pip. It's an action, and you choose a haunted player, and I believe you resolve each Pip on a card in their discard, right?
Correct.
So with
And it
something,
also has a Amber Pip as well.
yes. So if someone's got a sandworm or something akin to a sandworm, it becomes a 3 amber card, right? Which is
Well, we talked about how this set has the most enhancements floating around anyway.
right.
So more likely than not, you're gonna have something crazy in your own discard,
Yeah.
which you can target.
Oh, that reminds me of one of the reasons why Equidon is so ridiculous right now is a card called Reap the Wild Winds, I think.
Hmm.
It's a Equidon uncommon action with an Amber Pip and 3 Amber enhancements, which is, fertility chant levels of Amber generation with no downside,
All right.
which is good to me. I don't know.
You don't even have to worry about the effect.
Yeah, you don't even have to worry about the downside, and then you may or may not play it. And if you do, reveal a random card from each player's hand, and each player gains each Amber Pip on the revealed card from their hand.
You're always happy with the Amber bonus for playing it and the 3 enhanced Ambers I got put in. Like,
Yeah, but because
what
of the
what more is there?
enhancements, you're more likely than your opponent to have
Right.
Amber Pips on your
Exactly.
cards, right? And you also know when you're playing it, right? So you could play at the end of a turn when you have only enhanced cards left in your hand, or just know that like you've got you've got
Yeah,
pips throughout your
you
hand.
can stack your hand in
Yeah,
such a way that you have the highest chance to hit Amber Pips.
yeah, that
Cursed
part's
Relic is
crazy.
also back.
Oh yeah,
We didn't talk about Cursed Relic, but we hit more Amber Pips, right?
yeah, and Cursed Relic now in a set with discard pips.
Yeah, it kind of is a shame that there isn't a lot of in-house ways to discard anymore. There might be like one
Might be.
that I was looking at, but yeah, you are kind of dependent on discard pips
Oh, we've got
or
Blue Light Special, which
yeah.
I think is a common and has an Amber
Is
Pip.
it a common?
It shows up commonly. It has an Amber Pip, and you discard a random card from your hand and then gain an
Right.
Amber.
That was the random card one. Right, right, right.
Yeah, but you've got Geistoid now, right?
Yeah, you've got ways to discard. There is some stuff in Mars even
Some stuff
that
in Dis.
I was gonna say Mars has a bunch of, show something in your hand and purge it.
Right.
So easy way to get Cursed Relic out of your deck. And one of the big things in Geistoid is PKE Symphonator. So this is 2 power creature. Play gain 1 amber for each card in your opponent's archives. Your opponent discards each card in their archives. So it is because we don't have Dysania in this set, we do have Dysania in Tokens of Change, but because we don't have Dysania in this set, this is the closest second thing to it.
It's actually better than Dysania. You know why?
Right.
It,
I
it
don't
works.
remember.
It works on cards that have been quote unquote abducted by
Right.
your opponent. So cards that you own that are placed into their archives that have some pre-planned exit, right? So like cards like Scoop Up tell you where the cards go when they exit the archives. You gain the amber before you discard the cards. So regardless of if they are discarded or not, you gain the amber. Whereas Dysania didn't work with those cards, right? So you just missed amber
Right.
for each
Correct.
of your cards in their archives.
Yeah, so this one, like you said, you get the amber beforehand, which is very nice.
Right. And I'm glad it's there, not even as like a more powerful version, but just a version that works how you think it should, right? Where
Hmm.
Dysania didn't.
Hmm.
That was one of the cases like crop circles or destructive
Right.
analysis that just felt bad when somebody played it and it didn't work how they wanted it to.
Yeah, and you have to explain it, and then you're like, actually, your card is a little worse, and then they're like, oh, you're just making it up. But no, it definitely feels uh better to play and to play against that card when both people know, kind of how a card is supposed to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, Geist State's got some really strong cards. They have Parabyte, which is, I think, maybe their power common. Well, their new power common, aside from the actions, which are always extremely good, like in here somewhere in Chuck Restoration. It's a creature with Play Reap. A friendly creature captures an amber. And
Yeah, going
also,
back to that capture theme.
you're right. And also, for each amber on all of your creatures, increases your opponent's key cost. So it's like Faust the Great, except it counts each amber instead of each creature, and it's play reap capture instead of play exalt.
Right.
So it's like very strong. It's very strong. Um, and this Geistoid has a decent access to taunt in this set. So I think it feels very powerful, especially against like older set. And if you can establish that board, is one of the bigger threats of creatures.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
What do you got?
they also have a common summoned council, which is one of the few ways in set to get purge cards back, which is pretty interesting. So it's just a 2-power creature after reap. Choose a card in your discard pile or a purge card you own. Shuffle the chosen card into your deck. And I believe that's the only way to get purge cards back in this set. I could be wrong.
I think so.
Um,
Yeah. But yeah,
yeah, so that's a cute little thing for Geistoid to have as a part of their toolbox.
right. It's on a small creature, and I think it's
Yeah,
uncommon, right?
it is. Well, it's common,
Oh, it's
so you're
common.
gonna see a bunch,
Oh,
which
okay.
is a shame. Yeah,
Yeah, that is interesting. This is the first time a card like that has showed up at common
yeah, it definitely
below.
feels more niche, right?
First time it's shown up below rare, actually.
Oh, yeah, you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, because we had Poltergeistoids and a Universal Recycling Bin and Forgotten Guardian, as far as I know.
Hmm. Yes, those are the ones I was thinking of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's something we're missing, but yeah.
So it is interesting to see it at that level, although it works on like a Forgotten Guardian kind of speed.
It is shuffle into your deck, so it's not anything crazy.
I think it works in Aember Skies. You know, it's like a slow effect, and there I don't think there are any cards that purge themselves, right?
There are a couple in tokens of change,
Yeah.
but I am pressed to think of something in Aember Skies.
Right. So it's not like in Grim Reminders where it could be used to cheat a cost, like in, say, Dimensional Rescue or Ancestral Timekeeper or Island of Misfit Toys or even Well of Memory. It is more of a reactive piece, which is, I think, maybe a healthier place and maybe why it's okay it
Mhm.
shows up at common. Yeah, I think Geistred has a lot going for it. The creatures are, on a whole, smaller than the bigger creatures in Grim Reminders, so it feels like Geistoid is finding like a healthier place, which is definitely less powerful, and I can feel it, but I'm not like unhappy to see that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What are you thinking for the next house?
I want to ask you, what's next?
I'm thinking Brobnar, the most forgettable house.
I would have
Oh,
disagreed with you a bit ago, but I've definitely seeing the upsides.
Doesn't have any really good cards, and it doesn't have any really bad cards, so it kind of sits in this place in my mind of Aember Skies only has 6 houses, and I'm forgetting what the 7th one is. You have some old classics returning. You've got Burn the Stockpile. You've got fun Pile of Skulls. The Pile of Skulls was pretty good in Coda Days. And then you've got some really standout cards like Final Refrain. There's a lot of. I've been trying to push this card now with, especially in Aember Skies, some secret tech for Rule of 6 listeners here, if you stuck with us this long. Final Refrain is in the set, along with Grenade Snibs. So Grenade Snib is a classic destroyed, your opponent loses some, in a set with Dust Imps, so gain a bunch of amber, in a set with Amber Drakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So pull a couple of Final Refrains, alliance yourself 3 Amber Drakes, and you gotta win.
Yeah, and even if
Kinda.
you've already forged those keys, you gain
Right.
12 amber.
Right. Final Refrain is probably the best Brobnar card, but what do you think about Brobnar overall as a house?
They have the perhaps largest access to readying effects in the set.
Sure.
So they've got Cacophonous Riot, which is extremely powerful classic from Grim Reminders.
On a common, yeah.
Yes. Fancy Donovan at common allows you to use a non-Brobnar creature, and already does its work of enhancing. Clap of Thunder, which destroys the least powerful creature, and ready's the most powerful creature. Is that it?
Ready and Enrage.
Ready
And
Enrage.
like I was saying before, there's a lot of good destroyed effects in this set.
There's also Razor Glass, which allows you to ready and use the least powerful creature, which is quite strong actually in a set with like Dis where it is, where the reap effects are incredible.
Yeah, I'm very happy it's ready and use rather than ready and fight.
Yeah, it's kind of a new direction. We haven't seen that much since Staff Sergeant Rhea,
Sure.
like Inspiration, ages ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very strong effect in the set, and it helps that, some of the strongest effects are on small creatures.
I think the best creature, speaking of creatures, is Narplet, who is a 3-power creature. Narplet's neighbors gain versatile. I was playing just last night. I had Narplet in the middle of my board. I used her 2 neighbors. It was a dis turn. I did a Gift of Amber. I blew up her 2 neighbors. She gets 2 new neighbors. And they're versatile. I think there's a lot of fun stuff you could really do, making a lot of the creatures in the set versatile.
Yeah, speaking of Staff Sergeant Rhea, some of the same shenanigans, but perhaps with more access to destroyed effects.
I guess it is interesting that all the Star Alliance stuff kind of got shifted to Brobnar. Kind of the last place I'd expect it to be in, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to see it here.
I guess it's trickling down some benefits from Worlds Collide, where Brobnar got nothing.
Sure. Well, it's some of that bleed you were talking about before, right?
True. Brobnar and Logos both have a lot more capture than they ever did. Terrence Shortfoot, right?
Yeah. He's a common, right?
Yeah,
Is
he's
it
a common who enters play or reaps to capture as elusive, and then whenever your opponent reaps, removes an amber from itself.
Very good. Very solid creature.
So actually my favorite common creature is DB Gobber. I think a reference to a famous thief. It has a scrap effect, which is very good. Each player with 7 or more amber loses 2. And on reap, makes your opponent lose 1. So it's just a very solid amber control creature.
Yeah, you're always happy to see it. It's a common. What else can you ask for?
It fits a very important role in Brobnar, where Brobnar traditionally has a tough time getting continuous access to amber control, right? A lot of your creatures that have it on fight effects, right? So
historically, it's just been actions most of the time, right? You've got your Rant and Rive, your Burn the Stockpile, that sort of.
You do have like Groke and Crump and Barn Burner, not Barn Burner. The guy who makes you Blunderbore, but they tend to have a limited lifespan, right? Because they're required to fight to do so.
Correct.
So it is nice having more continuous forms of amber control, short of Pile of Skulls or Shattered Throne. So it's nice to see that stuff at common, if not a bit new. Logos also has more capture than it used to. The amber control in general has moved to a lot of capture, except for very few houses. So there's been bleed on capture, but the shadows effects of stealing have been left to mainly Skyborn.
Conditionally in Skyborn.
Yeah, conditionally in Skyborn, or sometimes in Equidon. Where is it anywhere else really?
Information exchanges in the set, but yeah, you're gonna see it most often in Skyborn and Equidon.
Which is, I think, a good thing. I'd rather see capture everywhere and steal more specific, right? Which
Mhm.
is kind of where it was in Coda. It feels like it establishes more house identity while keeping everyone able to like actually play turns while your opponent has Amber. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Brobnar where it's at. I think it's an important role filler. It doesn't feel like the best at clearing boards, but it is very important at like utilizing boards.
There is no board clear except Final Refrain, I guess. Yeah, there's no, Coward's End or the like
Yeah.
in Brobnar.
Huh.
Coming down to the last two houses, what are your picks for second worst and then the worst of the set?
It's honestly, I want to put Mars at second worst.
Ooh, I'm the opposite.
I
But yeah,
I
go
could
ahead.
go either way on it. That's how I was before. But playing with it more, like, so I'm going to talk about Mars. We've got
Sure.
Dr. Xylo for one. And one of the better recruiter-ish effects, there's a Mars common that allows you to return a friendly creature to your hand and then ready a friendly Mars creature, I believe.
Yes.
It also enhances a Mars pip, so quite a good card. It can be used to bounce the same creature, set something up for later, and then use a ready Xylo, you know?
It might be the
There's-
only house that has two common recruiters.
Yeah, which is interesting. Mars is kind of like a rule breaking house. Maybe
Hmm.
they achieve a lot off of being able to use more creatures. Xyla's extremely good. They have a card called like Zizinx the Bold or something, which has after fight.
Sinwix. Yeah.
Sinwix the Bold. After fight, an enemy creature captures two from its own side, which is an
Hmm.
extremely good effect.
Yeah, a lot of Discourse Online might be the best Mars card. Well, and best thing to grab back with Dr. Xylo most of the time.
Yeah, we've got brain darts. And it feels like it does what it needs to. It's definitely no Grim Reminders. Probably still below Winds of Exchange, but it has stuff going on, and we've got a little bit of archive disruption in pack hunting. I think it is something like that.
Harmonic Pack.
A manic pack, yes. Um, and then we've got brainstem antenna back.
I was gonna say I got some fancy new tools.
That is the new way of breaking Dr. Xylo. Because every time you reap with Xylo, you play a Mars creature, which causes brainstem antenna to ready Xylo, and there you go. We even have Zip the Implanter back, so we still have like very high quality Mars creatures. We're seeing a little bit more of the like Coda AOA style Mars creatures, which kind of just do the like face down just Mars kind of kind of thing.
Yeah, I wanted to sneak in. Crystal Hive is also back in the set.
Oh.
So, um, uh, even though you're not, necessarily rule of sixing with Dr. Xylo, even if you just reap, bring one creature back and reap again, that's 4 amber, right?
Yeah.
You don't even necessarily need to do rule of six shenanigans to gain a bunch of amber from reaping in Mars anymore.
We also have Kaboom. Now in a set though without Iron X Rebel, feels a lot different. Also without Mars tokens.
Yeah, and there's no real Mars creatures with play, so you're depending a lot on your actions to get your guys ready.
Yeah, or even just treat it as like a gateway to Dis, but with like a
Yeah,
little
sure,
Mars
sure.
upside. Sure. Although the new changes to card pool size make it feel kind of more awkward than it should because it keeps showing up in like 2 and 3 ofs, where you don't have very many
Yeah,
Mars creatures.
that's another thing I was gonna bring up where looking at Mars pods, just like the initial days when Aember Skies was first getting dropped and showing up in the Master Vault, Every Mars pod that I saw was horrible.
Yeah.
And I think the big problem is their commons aren't really great. So you're depending a lot on high rolling your Mars pod, but more often than not, just looking at my own collection now, the Mars pods are very, very lackluster. And it's a shame. There's too many bad commons, I think, is what it comes down to.
Yeah. I would say that as well about the next house I want to talk about, but um,
Yeah.
I think Mars um, fills like similar roles it did to um, during like Coda, where it's maybe a little bit less split than it was in Coda, um, and features tools like John Smith, but better,
Hmm.
and it it feels like a bit of a better. It feels like a redux of Coda Mars, honestly, slightly better. Where in Coda Mars, it felt like it was like brainstem antenna or three battle fleets or bust, right?
Hmm. Well, I still think it's Brainstem Antenna is probably the best Mars card here in this set. I'm
Oh yeah.
taking a peek, but so you're still kind of hoping for Brainstem Antenna or bust.
Well, you've got
I was
Kaboom.
trying to. Oh, okay, sure. Just one kaboom.
Well, you Kaboom brainstem antenna is new,
Sure.
right? That's a new combo, and it's quite
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah, I was trying to break Brainstem Antenna, just taking a peek at like what you could do with it. I really like it with Shades, the
Mm,
Geistoid card, where you can action play a creature from your discard, and whenever you play it, comes back. So it's like a doctor that may already be ready on the field, right?
right.
Um, I really like throwing Brainstem Antenna on a bunch of the discards, like Vapor Imp, for example, which discards a random card, and they can't play cards of that type. Um, so there's a ton of really nice targets for Brainstem Antenna, which even in Coda days, there weren't, a lot of good stuff to Brainstem Antenna, right?
Yeah.
It out of house, I should say.
Right. Yeah. I think this is a really cool set to see brainstem antenna in with all like
Hmm.
the creatures that kind of just hit board and then like require you to like wait to get to them again. I need you to defend Skyborn to me. I know it's got good cards, but
I'm telling you, I think red line rotation single-handedly brings it up a tier.
okay.
That's, I think there are so many ways in this set to give your opponent amber, not to mention all the capture.
Mhm.
One deck I have, which I've been having a lot of success with, it has the Treasure Island package I was talking about. It has double red line rotation, basically any flank creature. So Flint Stash, it gives every flank creature destroyed the owner gains too. So it's really easy to, blow up your opponent's board and then steal it all back. And it is even better as a support house for something like this, right? Where you want to blow up your own board. Every time you blow up the board now, guess what? You're gaining 4 additional amber every time you do that. There are a ton of ways to profit off of the artifacts and actions of Skyborn. Not only do they have the red line rotation that we talked about, but also against all flags, which is a just steal 2 if any flank creature shares a house with another flank creature, otherwise steal 1. And it has an Amber Pip. Yeah, so it's just worst case scenario, steal 1, gain 1. And having that on a common is kind of our Shadow's replacement, right?
Right.
I keep avoiding the creatures because the creatures are not that great.
Yeah.
We have a lot of conditional creatures who don't even give us much bonus for fulfilling their condition. We have a lot of creatures that care about key color, that even when the key color is correct and you are optimal, their payoff is not very good.
Right. And like
um,
during your first pass of the deck, all of them do nothing, right?
right,
All of them
right.
do nothing, and then maybe this is just new set stuff, but they're really hard to read. Or they're so long
Yeah.
for what they do. Like there's
I
the
think the
Skulking Saboteurs, which has like five
right.
lines of text or something related to like the three key colors.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it feels like a formatting miss for me, where these cards with pretty simple effects are kind of overcomplicated by working with the key cost and being phrased in the way they are.
Yeah, it almost feels like GG was a little scared to go ham in power level for these because it does feel like they are in some cases below average before the key cost conditions, and then that brings it just up to average, which is a real shame.
And for me, like looking at this new set, I don't know, like house icons overshadow both like Skyborn and Sky Beasts for me.
Hmm.
They
Yeah,
feel way more impactful than Skyborn does. And like, yeah,
I did mention it earlier, but I do think Skyborn Double House Enhanced Artifact Razor's Gambit, which is ready and fight with a friendly Skyborn creature. If your blue key is forged, repeat the preceding effect. I think you can get real zany with having Skyborn enhanced out of house and playing a bunch of awesome Skyborn enhanced creatures that aren't of House Skyborn natively, especially if, a House Enhanced lands on Razor's Gambit, then in two out of your three houses, you are readying twice, which is, you can get some pretty crazy combos going.
yeah, I think the rares in Skyborn are quite good, almost across the board. But the maybe it's just the pools we've opened. This is where our own anecdotal experience is where like your Mars is bad and like my Skyborn's bad.
I'll say my Skyborn is bad. I only have like one good Skyborn pod. Mars is much more, hit or miss. I have a couple that could be up there. I do want to share a deck that does have a pretty cool Mars, which will be kind of fun. I do agree that on average, Mars is probably better than Skyborn, but I think on the upper end of decks, having access to red line rotation is crazy.
It's true.
Even just having one in your deck, it's such pressure on your opponent to not have that swing, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, especially into like recent sets. Tall Amber generation has been
Hmm.
kind of like rampant, and older sets sometimes see a lot of success in bringing scaling into them, but can struggle
Is
in
this
other
the
respects.
only scaling in
We
the
have
set?
Effervescent Principle in
Sure.
Logos,
Okay.
and the two of them combo extremely well. I
Hmm.
believe Effervescent Principle is a common,
I have
um,
no idea.
and
I should know.
red line is
It is a
uncommon.
common.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then redline it uncommon. In addition to all the capture effects and like giving amber, it it, it definitely plays a huge role in giving Skyborn a place in the set. And I think
Hmm.
for sure, like I don't know, having three against all flags definitely gonna be like really strong and like maybe make me want to just play a deck. But yeah, when I have 8 creatures, I'm not super happy.
I've been specifically avoiding talking about this, but what do you think about the new cycle? So the ships. What is your favorite ship?
Okay, here's the thing: is that they've created like a house identity for ships, or design identity for ships where they
Hmm.
exalt themselves a number of times and then they have some way of moving that amber, right? So I guess
Hmm.
it's like, oh, these ships are carrying amber and they're like plundering, and then like you go and like you raid the ship and you get the amber before they can complete their job, right? At
Right.
the same time, we have like several ships, maybe like 3 or 4. Yeah, there's 2 in Skyborn, Black Tempest and the Rose of Sharon.
Oh,
Um,
Black Tempest doesn't count.
does it?
It Black Tempest isn't technically a ship. Well, it's
Oh,
not one of the ones that gets paired with two upgrades.
oh, okay.
He's just the slow, a solo guy.
Oh, okay. Okay, so there's Rose of Sharon. There is
Oh,
the
Rose of Sharon also doesn't count. But yeah, it's
wait.
just Nantucket for Skyborn.
Oh,
That
okay.
is the ship. But I mean, they also have other ships that,
Okay.
exist.
Okay. Does Nantucket exalt itself?
It does not.
It does not. Okay, so Nantucket,
Yeah, that's
the
uh
the Geistoid copter, the
he
Logos
captures
Nautilus.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of them exalt themselves, right?
Hmm.
So it's in this weird place where like the ships that exalt themselves feel like at times unplayable. Like I played on Tuesday, and I reached a point where I like had the Mars ship in my hand, the saucer, and
Hmm.
it exalts itself 4 times, and then like after Reap moves 2 of its Amber to your pool or something like that. And I knew I wasn't supposed to play it, right? It would just get wiped. But I was like, I don't want to go an entire set having never even tried
Hmm.
playing this card. And so I did, and then it immediately gets removed. And I was like, I fucking knew it. Like, oh, why did I do that for? I mean, those generally bad. This one happens to have an effect that moves all of its amber to an enemy creature, kind of Curiosaurus style. An
Yeah, I
enemy
do really like
creature.
the dis one. I
Yeah.
think the dis one is probably the best implementation of all the ships, right?
Yeah. Yeah. As far as the like space within the design and then how much you want
Hmm.
to play it and how all the different upgrades feel
I
impactful,
did
like parts
find
of passage.
a sneaky combo with Talon of Invidious, the dis ship.
Huh?
Basically, you can use Gift of Amber
Mm-hmm.
on Talon of Invidious and an opponent's creature, and
Mm,
the destroyed effect happens first. You can move all the amber off of it and then drop it on the creature that was already getting destroyed by Gift of Amber,
yeah.
which is really nice. So, an easy 2 card combo to get the dis off your board. I mean, there's not a lot of bounce and purge necessarily in this set, so
Yeah.
chances are it would get destroyed anyway. But
Right.
if you need, a quick, clean way to get rid of it and get the amber back instantly, it's a nice way to do
Yeah. Curiosaurus gamers are eating well in
it.
with Gift of Amber.
Yeah, I think the idea behind the ships was they would be more like boss monsters. And we saw in the initial leaks for Aember Skies that the upgrades could only attach to the ships. So there might have been something where, the ships were way stronger and the upgrades were way stronger, but it just didn't feel good to have 2 cards in your deck that could only attach to a ship that could, not necessarily be on the field.
Upgrades
So,
already feel like the most unplayable cards
yeah,
generally. Like they have the
definitely.
hardest conditions to fill to like be able to play them, and then having ones that depended on like a creature that maybe you don't even want to play, like
Yeah.
uh, would not feel very good.
I think this is the result of having a dumbed down chips and dumbed down upgrades. Is this is what we kind of got, and it's kind of a weird nebulous area between a cool boss monster that you put on your board and you protect and it gives you value versus kind of just a normal creature, right?
Yeah, it kind of feels like instead of monsters, they're just like chumps. They're little minions. They're little loot
Yeah.
goblins, and it doesn't feel like a great space. And then there's also the factor of bringing in so many cards. I'm trying to think of like an example of this. Perhaps like for some people it's Geisoid Clocks. For some people it's like the Mars Not Elixion. But a card that might be pretty good, bringing in a bunch of cards you don't really care about, can sometimes feel like it sinks
Hmm.
the deck for you. A lot of these upgrades are actually pretty good. I think it
I'm
would
happy
be
with the Mars ones, but that might just because Mars pods are so struggling all the time that I'm happy to have 2 upgrades that do something.
right. I think generally they feel the best alongside one of the playable ships, obviously. I think it would be hard try to find a set of upgrades from a house that doesn't have at least 1 or 2 really good options. So it doesn't feel like the worst to have it show up. We're no strangers to having basically unplayable cards in our card game.
All right.
Give
I
it a
think
run.
all the linked cards this time around you're pretty happy to see any of them. Not
Uh,
Elixion, I would say, was kind of, bottom tier for me, but I don't think there's anything not Elixion level in this set.
Skyborn one. Let me take a look
Is
at
the
that.
Skyborn one bad? That might be.
The Skyborn
I haven't looked.
upgrades I didn't love.
They're not too good.
Yeah, so there's lateral
Um,
thrusters, which at the
mhm.
end of your turn you may rearrange creatures in your battle line. There's torpifying harpoon, which At the end of your turn, if this creature's not on a flank, destroy it.
And then the efficient Amber Burn is decent.
This one's good. Yeah, this one's
Yeah.
good. This creature gains your opponent's keys, costs -1 for each amber on this creature, and after Reap, exalt this creature. So it's actually quite
Yeah.
good if your opponent plays something like, I don't know, like a Trawler.
I mean, even just having all the capture in the set, right?
Yeah,
It's always good to drop it on something that's behind a bunch of taunts.
right. And you could maybe forge a free key off of
Yeah.
Freedom to Be, their key cheat.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's true. We didn't really talk about that, but Skyborn is one of the few houses that has a key cheat in this set, which again depends on you having flank creatures. So I don't know how much you're actually going to be getting it off, but
Yeah, it requires 2 Skyborn flanks to become a Forge for 8, right?
yes.
Which isn't like the best key cheat we've had, but it's certainly doable. And with red line rotation or efficient
Sure.
amber burner is like a real threat.
But yeah, I guess that's the whole of Amber Skies. I'm sure there's stuff we've missed.
Yeah. Okay. So
Uh,
run your 7 down for everyone real quick.
so my 7 go Dis, Logos, Equidon, then Geistoid, Brobnar, and then the final 2 I did Skyborn and then Mars. You may be convincing me Mars over Skyborn though.
See, I don't need to convince you that I'm right. One day you'll see, and I'm patient. For me, it is Ecodon. I'm now convinced. Ecodon, Dis, Logos, Geistoid, Brobnar, Mars, Skyborn. You said you had some decks you were really excited about.
Let's just do one in particular so we can do a little deep dive into this guy. So
Yeah.
this is the most fun Amber Skies I think I pulled. Its name is Six Phone, the Zoomaster Sycophant. Before I talk about it, let me know anything that you see that's popping up at you.
It has a lot of Amber Control in Logos, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal Hive with Xylo is very fun. I'm sure you have like a specific combo in mind. You're gonna trap me.
Not, no, nothing like really specific. Just, I think this deck in particular has been pretty good about just playing with what you get thrown.
Yeah, I mean
Nothing too crazy.
between Okugyo, Drumble, Effervescent Principle, and the other Amber Control, like the 3 information exchanges.
Right. I alluded to this earlier, but I've got the deanimator, right?
Yeah,
So deanimator with Akugyo and Drumble is a nice way to delete a bunch of amber from your opponent.
you
It's got 2 cauterize vitality, which I was talking about earlier. They're pretty much the standout card for me, at least, of this set, having destroy creature artifact with no downside. Decks of Keyforge right now, these are the preview scores, but it's saying my artifact control is a 5,
oh
which for any previous set would be crazy, but it might be about average for Ember Skies. We don't know yet. For this, I really like having hologramophone in Mars.
oh
So the 3 house enhancements that I got was a hologramophone in Mars, a articulated Wren in Mars, which we talked about being a great card, and a Slayer in Mars. Oh, I also got a Dr. Xylo in Dis. I was gonna say his full name and then thought better for my life choices. But I like being able to stick the doctor and ward it because that's not something that has been possible in the past
right.
and is something that not a lot of decks, even in Amber Skies, might be able to do, right? So this is what I was talking about, where a lot of people I see on the discords are asking like, oh, what combos should I look out for, right? What big swingy cards are there to look for? And I always say it's really hard for this set because you have to keep an eye out for your house enhance and see what that can actually give you. So, for example, in this deck in particular, having a ward on any of your Mars guys is really handy. You can set hologramophone a doctor. It can bring back an Eldest Batchminder, which can give everyone power counters.
And you have 9 Mars creatures, including the 2
Right.
enhanced. which is really good with
Right.
Crystal Hive and those effects like Doctor and Batchminder.
Right, and then we talked about the intentional discharge, which is the return a friendly creature to its owner's hand if you do ready a friendly Mars creature. So another way to ready and reap. Overall, I think this has been a really solid, nice example of how just a couple house enhances can really get you started. It's really funny because my Doctor Xylo is house enhanced Dis, so I could even use it on a Dis turn to bring back Slayer, which is a Dis creature, which you normally shouldn't be able to do, but you can use it right away because it is a Dis Mars creature now, which is kind of fun. Even if it's something like getting an articulated Wren back, on a Dis turn, just having the ability to do it on a Dis turn is kind of fun. A lot of these house enhance, I think, I said it before, but it's like the chase cards, right? You really want as many house enhancements as you can to have the best chance of having it land on something crazy. I think any artifact that has an action, you're happy to see a house enhance on. Any creature with some strong reap or fight or action is also great to see house enhance on.
Honestly, any creature.
Yeah, honestly, any creature. But yeah, having a lot of fun with this deck. I don't know if I'll say success, but definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like if you have a house enhance on, for example, a suspend demander, sure the fight's
Hmm.
really good. But if you have a house enhancement on a Drumble, you can capture your opponent's Amber in
Right.
other houses, right? So there's lots of different ways to benefit from house icons.
I'll also drop this one because I did talk about it earlier. This is my only good Skyborn pod. um, my only playable Skyborn pod, I should say. It is a deck with a Legacy Data Forge. If you take a look at the Skyborn house, it's double redline rotation and the Treasure Island package. This deck is named Nightingale of Hippig, if anyone's following along. The whole idea behind this deck is get a big archive, data forge. Honestly, I was data forging for my first key a lot of the time with this deck, which is not something you normally do, just because Flint's map archives the rest of the treasure package, right? That's already 3 cards in your archive, assuming you get it out decently early. There are some other ways, like backup plan in this deck to get cards into your archive.
You also
But the
have
funniest way,
two
oh, go ahead.
Arise.
Yeah, the funniest way to get a data forge off is actually Arise, because I don't believe we've had Arise and data forge in a set before.
No.
If you just want a big chunk of creatures in your hand, you just Arise and then pass the turn and then data forge. Not really fast, but really funny when it happens. So this deck, I actually got a lot of mileage from destroying my own board constantly. So using Flint's Stash, where each flank creature gains destroyed gain 2, you play a lot of creatures that your opponent usually wants to get rid of. Like I've got a couple of suspendamanders in here, a daughter, a Ezra Paz, a RM Fuller that are kind of must kills, kind of not. I would play a disboard, find some way to kill a bunch of my disc guys. I've got Chauncey in here who destroys another friendly creature and Chauncey if you do gain 3. If they're both on a flank, that's 7 Amber on one creature, which is kind of crazy. Then you Arise, you can play 2 creatures and then they tell no tales, which is a selective house wipe, which is a nice way to just gain another 4 Amber. And often I was finishing games with 12 Amber, and it was getting way more Amber than I should have gotten. Just having a key cheat, the red line rotations to kind of slow your opponent down, or even if they aren't slow and they respect it and go to 6 every time, you have almost a guaranteed a way to give them Amber with the Flint Stash, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 Bucks Bastion in the deck, which is enhanced with a Amber and a damage and scrap exalt an enemy flank creature. I
Oh.
don't think I've ever played this creature. I've always scrapped it.
Yeah.
Just even having those enhancements, right, throughout the deck, are a little help. It is really funny that the best playable Skyborn deck that I got out of my 94 Aember Skies is essentially 1 creature,
Yeah.
um, which
It's a good
is
creature too.
something to say. Yeah, raiding party is great. We didn't talk about it, but after fight, if 2 keys are the same color, forge, steal 2, otherwise steal 1.
It is 4 power.
4 power, yep. Considering I use the Bucks Bastions for their scrap effect, um, it's really funny to see a house that the payoff are in the static effects, which the rest of your houses can kind of leverage, which I kind of like.
Yeah, it's kind of what you want out of a Skyborn. It
Right.
feels like is like not the creatures.
Yeah. But yeah, those are two of my most fun Amber Skies decks I've pulled. With SAS previews coming out, scores are in a lot of flux right now. But if you do have the preview scores on, my two highest decks currently are both Equidon decks. So there's
Oh,
another point for Equidon being the top house.
that could just be
Uh,
because I rated Ecrodon and I did a really bad job. But
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I haven't played with those decks yet, so haven't figured out if they're great yet. But something to say.
yeah, I'll give him a try. Yeah,
Yeah, those will be my next two to try, definitely.
yeah, give him a try and then write in. I'd love to hear the other side of that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we do have a piece of listener mail today. This one comes from Ketzer, first time writer. Hello, June and guest. I hope y'all are doing well. I'm very excited for this podcast. I'm the type of player who's in it for the stories and the flavor. I often think about decks in terms of their personality or sometimes their role in a story. Keyforge feels more like the Yu-Gi-Oh anime than any other card game does, so I sometimes see a deck list or a playstyle that feel like a character to me. Examples: heroes are fair decks that pull together clever lines of play, valuing every card's unique applications. They're fun to cheer for when they're digging deep to fight from behind. Sometimes they're counter meta that punish the most oppressive strategies. Side characters can often have a fun thematic gimmick, like a game warping artifact or a unique rogue strategy, that make the game entertaining because you don't see that very often. Villains are wickedly oppressive and use cards or combos that might feel unfair or even hopeless to win against. They may have an unearned directive, rush strategy, or turn skipping control, or even longs. As the main villain of the Keyforge season, thank you, I have a few questions for you. What makes a deck or playstyle feel villainous to you? What do you think, Logan? Is there like a
Uh,
villain deck out there?
as the villain, no. um, yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but almost all the top end Grim Reminders decks kind of feel villainous to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this sort of way where they kind of break the rules of the game, and we've seen like really high amber swings or infinite turns that we haven't necessarily seen in the past. Just off the top of my head, the closest thing would be like an Eaton's Jar deck, right? Beforehand, that I would call like particularly villainous. What's your kind of take on what makes a deck villainous? I'm trying to think of something that's not Grim Reminders.
For me, it's like something you want to beat, right? So that can
Mm,
be something like fraud, where you hear frauds here,
hmm
and it's a famous deck, and you want to prove that, like, I don't know, maybe you want to prove something, maybe you want to prove that like your deck is better, even that you can outplay it, or that you have a plan. Or it can be something like Blake's Menagerie deck, which has like 7 curses, and you're like, okay, well, this is the villain. I'm gonna find a way through it, right? And then yeah, like a lot of like the high end of whatever the meta is, especially if it's pushing other things out, like all the GR decks except for Bandola. Um, I just kidding. That might be that might be the art phone. I don't know. They are really tough, and I get the feeling sometimes that they make things like Archon feel hard to get into when you feel
hmm
the same decks over and again. So it's like the kind of decks that you want to get ascended, kind of.
Yeah. I think what it comes down to is the villain decks are really good at pushing questions forward, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have an answer, or even if you do have an answer, a lot of the times, a lot of these villainous decks can just push through and kind of steamroll, right?
Right.
And I think that's what makes them feel not necessarily bad to play against, but kind of makes it feel inevitable to play against, where, oh, it's turn five, I guess you win, type of deal. I think it's really hard to tell, like, if your own deck is villainous. I would definitely say my top deck I've used to get top eight is definitely in the villainous category.
Oh, the Mars
Um,
rule of 6 one.
Yeah.
I think any Mars Rule of Six is villainous.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah,
We're getting all the villainous stuff from Grim Reminders, but
exactly.
maybe that's just the most recent villain to hate on. Maybe when Aember Skies comes out, then they'll be the new villain. We have to
Yeah,
see how things shake out.
or maybe an old villain will rise up. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, don't forget about them. Okay, I think you've already kind of jumped into this next one, but Ketzer also asks, what are the three most villainous cards in the game? Eden's Jar?
Eaton's Jar. What else is just like good by itself?
Just good by itself?
Let's do
Corn of
one
the
for the
Market?
future. Ooh,
Because you can't play this turn is pretty good, and you don't.
I like Corner of the Market.
Corn
I
of the
think that's
Market's pretty
good.
good.
I was gonna say red line rotation, but just for one for the future. But let me think.
Mm,
Oh, probably Brio, right? It's Brio.
Brio. Yeah, does this
Yeah,
kill Brio, right? Like, it's the villain.
it's definitely that boogeyman in the closet, right?
I can almost think
I
of
think.
like Curiosaurus as a villain, you know? It's like a cartoon villain, you know? Not like the main villain, but like one of the
Yeah,
lackeys you run into who like changes the whole way you have to fight, and it's like I didn't sign up for this dude.
it's the. Nah, I think that falls under sidekick. Remember the sidekick or the
Oh, okay,
weird
okay,
house
okay.
warping your whirlpool decks, your Quixelstone decks. Quixelstone can be villainous, but I think it's more game warpy. But
Okay.
yeah,
Next, what is your villainous origin story, and where is your arc going next? Okay.
all right, you take that one.
So we've got a part for you too. What is your villainous origin story? So for Worlds last year, I was gonna play Alliance. I was set on it. It was a cool format. I was having a lot of fun brewing. You know, I squeezed in an invitation right at Canadian Nationals, and me and Cat Merrill figured out an even better version of the deck. And I, in a in a manic mood, found a pod I really liked in Italy, and I offered $300 on it without thinking too much about it. And then people were like, "You probably could have asked for less," you know? I was like, "Yeah, maybe," but I spent the money, and even my therapist was like, "Yeah, it's just like, yeah, if you enjoy it, like it's a good investment." I was like, "Cool, thank you, thank you very much. I feel better
So
now."
you're supporting my decision, yes.
Yes.
That's what I hear.
This is like a month and a half before Worlds. A month later, I get a notification that is on its way back to sender, and I'm mortified. Right, the deck I wanted to play wasn't there anymore. Right, uh, and it was just it was brutal to know that it was on its way back, and I had no way of intercepting it because you can't intercept the international package. In the deck was within driving distance of me, but I wouldn't be allowed to go grab it because it was at like a distribution center. It was just so brutal just to see it, like that dream crushed in front of me, that I knew
Yeah.
2024 I would get to play Keyforge my way, and so this was my villainous arc. Um, I've been having fun hopping in and out of like different ways of playing Keyforge, and sometimes playing heal, like in Roseville this year. And you know what arc is next? Some people keep asking about the redemption arc, but personally, I expect to get even worse next year. uh, all right. So they extend the question to you, Logan. What do you see
Uh,
yourself as? Hero, side character, or villain?
I'm not sure. I would say that my villain origin story is in Roseville when I got beaten by a certain someone who may or may not be on this podcast with me. No, I would say maybe villainous in the sense that I was a big Alliance player. So I was always happy to brew new stuff. This was back in WoW days. I had a really fun like Blorb build, so I was definitely sidekick territory. And it was the one vault tour where they cut Alliance to top four
Yeah.
instead of top eight. It was me and Sydney. We both missed the cutoff for top eight, and that was the one and probably final chance that Blorbs would have been top 8 in
Oh
Alliance.
no.
Bouncing off of that, opened a couple Grim Reminders boxes as you do, and I've pulled an Archon deck, which has been able to consistently get to top 8, which I really like. Since then, I've kind of haven't looked back at Alliance, which is a shame. I really enjoyed Alliance, but now that I have an Archon deck that I enjoy playing, that is air quotes villainous, I think I'm definitely been bringing the pain to a lot of people who grew up against me. Roseville was kind of the first, I would say, real test of my new deck. It is called Extravagantly Prideful Synodor. It's a Mars Rule of 6 shenanigans, Geistoid, Mars, Brobnar, but no Winds of Death and no Key Abduction, so it must be fair, right? um, that was the first run of it, and it was back when Revenants couldn't be scanned in, right? So I remember making it to top 8, and everyone was like, "Oh, who got to top 8? Who got to top 8?" And everyone's like, "Well, we have 7 of the decks. I don't. No one knew what the last 8th deck was. It was mine. It
That's
was
so sick.
so I was hidden under the radar as the 8th deck with a Revenant. It's got the Phantom Drummernaut in Mars, so it's really fun. Made its way all the way to top 8. Got knocked out by
The
June
villain.
here.
The villain.
The villain, the true villain. Managed to still place top 8, which I'm proud about. It is my guaranteed Revenant deck too. So it has the Awakenings border. So I like to joke that I got best dressed in top 8 as my award. But I'm just really happy to see not only a Revenant deck make top 8, because I don't think a lot of them have, but it's definitely the only Awakenings deck that's hit top 8. Most recently brought it to Vegas and got second place there as well. So 2-time second place winner here. In terms of where I'm going in the future, definitely going to try and do LCQ for KFC. If I make it past LCQ, I don't know if my deck has enough gas in it to bring it to the Worlds bracket, but you never know. Might get the God draw a million times, but would definitely be happy to play it. Otherwise, probably going to do the Open there. You might see me there, but we'll see if I can get a few wins and terrorize some people in the Open and Worlds. That's my goal.
This all sounds like hero behavior.
Is it hero behavior?
Coming in second, continuing to show up with the Awakenings deck.
Yeah, but
granted to you by Richard Garfield himself.
You have to remember all of the bodies I've trodden on to get to second place.
We don't talk about those. I don't know. You're going with it with one last chance.
We'll be a hero this time around.
Yeah, and maybe you find a brand new weapon in Aember Skies. Who knows?
That's true. Haven't found the silver bullet yet, but
maybe
day.
This is you going from side character to hero. Maybe that's it.
Okay, not side character to villain, side character to hero.
No, I believe.
All right, we have room to grow into a villain after the hero arc anyway.
Exactly, because the next question is this your final form? No, absolutely not. I got a 5-year plan.
My villain arc will be when I return to Alliance with a vengeance. After I'm done with Archon.
Okay, I'll give a little spoiler. The penultimate chapter of my arc is when I stage a rebellion and y'all place me on the throne of Ghost Galaxy and I fix the game. That's I'm just saying.
I'll look forward to our June Overlord.
I'm just saying the revolution is real, Do you have any advice for other aspiring villains? Just remember who you play against. Take as many rivals as you can. Take them all. I think winning with grace is honestly the greatest thing you can do as a villain.
You want to be the villain everyone remembers, not the villain everyone dislikes.
Yes. Win with grace and just tell them, especially during groups, people after a good game, like, I hope I see you in finals, Logan almost got there. We're close.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird matchup. I think I ended up getting 4th that time around.
Yeah.
And the only 2 games I lost were against Bandola twice, which is just unfortunate, which is really funny to me. Definitely should have been second there, but no, it's all right. That's how the bracket shakes out.
Yeah. Yeah. Next time. Well, you got it. You actually got there. You got there a couple times. Yeah. Win with grace. Make sure people know you won because you were better. Let them know just how good you are, and let that speak for itself. And then maybe, if people say things, you don't deny it. And my advice for all villains is stay classy. A little word from my new Sue. Do you have any advice for side character to hero track?
Keep fighting the good fight against our oppressive overlords up there at the top. Play decks that you enjoy. I think it's always really exciting when you know your deck in and out rather than an opponent knowing your deck, which is always really fun. Underdog stories are always the best kind of story. So even if you're down now, turnaround's just around the corner. So always a chance to become a hero.
Yeah, that was me once. I remember the days. Heroes, villains, sidekicks alike, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Aember Skies talk in Rule of 6.
We're a little fried. We've been talking
fried
for quite a while.
It's been a long time. It's been really fun. I'm looking forward to so much more Aember Skies. I'm really curious to see how our top 7 list look by the time KFC rolls around, especially because Sealed Worlds and Open will be in Aember Skies format.
And more decks in general will be opened up, so we'll get a clearer picture of kind of how these houses look like.
Well, I really enjoyed having you on for this first Logan episode. We'll see. Maybe maybe I can convince you to come back.
Yeah, if you guys like me, sound off in the comments. Get me back.
I don't care if you like him. I won't bring him back.
All right, there's the hero versus villain mentality right there.
Any last words for our listeners?
Keep playing Keyforge. Go out to your LGSs, get some games in.
Yeah, pick up some Aember Skies in a couple weeks. I don't know when the release free date is.
I am not too sure, but definitely see a bunch of you at KFC if you're attending. I know I'm attending. June, you said you're attending?
Yeah, right? I'll be there.
Excited.
All right. Well, we'll see you at KFC, and don't forget to pull your archives. Later.
Woo!
That's it. That's how it's done.